I'm from Australia, so we'll start that way. It's a really great pleasure to be here and with you at this conference, in this room, on this paddock, at this university, which has a very special place in my heart. I want to thank the organizers for organizing this excellent event and for inviting me to talk today, shipping me all the way from Australia. It's a great privilege. As the title for my paper suggests, I want to spend our time together this morning to think about the relationship between time and the politics of feminist knowledge production. I'm curious about knowledge producers as beings in time, as temporal becomings, and what it means to be of a time, on time, in time, behind the times, buying time, out of time. What time is it? Is it even possible to tell the time of knowledge? Can one's time be up? What does it mean to be timely, and how does the untimely figure also in its disciplinary productivity? In academic culture, declaring that something is timely is usually a compliment. This book makes a timely contribution, English-speaking academics say when they want to commend it. That's a timely intervention, they declare when they inscribe significance. It appears that timely is shorthand for saying that something's not only germane, on time, here at the right time, but also, of course, important, necessary, needed. In feminist scholarship and practice, however, we often see an exaltation of the untimely. Wendy Brown, for example, expresses that in order to be critical, one must, among other things, think against the age or be untimely. And Elizabeth Groves insists that feminists engage in and with untimely thought and untimely questions, that they insist on being bothersome and inconvenient, perhaps a bit trying or outrageous. This resonates with a long tradition of extolling the inappropriated within some versions of feminism. Here, a timely contribution may therefore well be an untimely one, and vice versa. Furthermore, from other places in science and literature, we hear stories about how something that was deemed untimely by contemporaries later turned out to be a major breakthrough or a major work, which is a narrative that leans up against the image of the genius as potentially mad or the mad as potentially genius, and is a narrative that celebrates the untimely in a roundabout way. The untimely carries potential, and you may well have been one of the ones that missed it. This particular notion of the untimely is about the unknown, or the untried, the future, in a sense, where there's also the notion that something is untimely because it is of the past. We've been there, done that. That was in the olden days. So each of us, as situated knowledge producers and knowledge disseminators, are faced with negotiating the timeliness of our endeavor, and negotiating a number of discourses of timeliness that are not always commensurable. It is this complex that I want to pick at and send into this morning as we all ponder the question, what counts as knowledge? Imagine sitting like a fly on the wall in the present-day academic's office. It's afternoon, the sun has been hitting the windows for a while now, and the air is getting stuffy. Two academics are talking. It appears that they're discussing potential examiners for a PhD student's almost complete dissertation. As is done, as has to be done. How about X? One of them gives a name, asks one of them. She'd appreciate the theoretical framework. Nah, says the other one, she's moved on. My meditations, and I will let you judge whether they are timely or untimely, are carried by what could possibly be called a method of cacophonic storytelling. Today, just like any other day, I will tell stories, as they will be different kinds of stories told in different kinds of voices, which are meant to jar rather than harmonize. I think of them as cacophonic, multiple, discordant, grating. I'm one of those people who will tell you that stories are all we have, and as I do so, I also try to listen to the stories I tell in the process of attempting to make a compelling case. One of the stories I live by asserts that listening to how we tell our stories and listening to how we account for the reasons why we tell certain stories, also as scholars and scientists, is important. As research continues to be a privileged form of knowledge production, or storytelling, we are expressly obliged to attend to the stories that we tell and how we tell them. So to assist in marking the change in storytelling voice, the slide behind me will change color, as you may have already observed. Given that I'm not an actor who can perform many distinct voices, I thought of literally changing hats, but that presented itself a logistical nightmare. There would be hats everywhere, right? So I apologize in advance to the colorblind, but I hope that you can follow the shifts nevertheless. At least you can see my hand moving, right? So I've not tried this technique before, so we will be feeling our way together. I fear that this method of cacophonic storytelling will disappoint any lingering desires for clarity and coherence, for authoritative linear argument, for interpretation, for depth, in particular for depth. But I'll also insist that this methodology of disappointment is deliberate. I'm interested in exploring and, importantly, enacting nonlinear ways of making and sharing scientific knowledge, in trying to offer good knowledge without certainty and closure, and in considering juxtaposed narrative fragments as a way of sensing into complexity. Perhaps the method will invite in each of us reflections about what is missing or amiss, and thereby present an opportunity to reflect on how that may have come to be felt or thought. It's April 1998. I sit opposite him in his cluttered office, the voice recorder lying on the table between us. This space is crammed full of books and papers, to the rim it seems. This eminent professor has deigned to give me 45 minutes of his valuable time. I feel that I'm supposed to feel gratitude and reverence. I'm also supposed to be the neutral interviewer, detached, inquisitive, building just enough rapport to get to the good stories, the stories that academics tell off the record, behind closed doors. But it's not going according to script. He's making me angry. This pompous ass sitting there pontificating about the evils of postmodernism, halfway between disciplining me personally and giving a lecture. Newfangled nonsense, he says, tapping his finger hard into the tabletop. I think he's an idiot. Back in the 1960s, Thomas S. Kuhn offered the notion of paradigm to explain the progression of science. He argued that at any point of time, certain beliefs and practices are held axiomatic, but that these would become either gradually or radically under attack, whence a revolution would occur and a new paradigm take over. And so science would progress. Others before me have spent time considering the extent to which the concept of paradigm is adequate for describing the progression of thought and practice in the social sciences and humanities, where we find the majority of gender research. Some of these authors lament that these disciplines are pre-paradigmatic, as they call it, that they have not yet matured into proper science, and many of them yearn for it, for consensus, for baseline agreements. Others rejoice in the dissension and believe that the state of multiple and competing paradigms is not only inevitable, but immensely desirable. Kuhn's work is interesting for its account of transformation. Yet, if it is so that we in the humanities and social sciences do not follow the scientific model of sequential paradigmatic revolutions, then how can we account for changes to our disciplines, to our methods, to our preferred conceptual vocabularies, to our empirical foci, to our notions of good academicity? This is a difficult question, of course, and one that I cannot do any real justice to this morning. Meanwhile, the construct of the turn in social and cultural theory may be helpful to capture part of the dynamic of transformation, although we may want to forgo the hopes entangled in the assumption of progress. The notion of a turn, it seems to me, is one way to begin to make some sense of the temporality of academic knowledge production, each turn responding to other turns, making firsts of themselves and othering others, and each turner assembling a relatively shared set of assumptions, of interests, of investments. Unlike Kuhn's notion of paradigm, turns can be contemporaneous, numerous, and overlapping. Some recent turns that have impacted upon and have been played out in feminist and gender research include, as I'm sure you already know, the cultural turn, the linguistic turn, the discursive turn, the spatial turn, the narrative turn, the praxis turn, the affective turn, the reparative turn, the ontological turn, the posthuman turn, the new materialism's turn, the post-representational turn, and so on.